time to open the Finance Committee meeting for this evening. This evening, we have 3 or 4 subject areas to deal with, and I'd just like to touch them very briefly. One is that, as you can see, Jack Brown is not here. Jack Brown is retired because of some health issues on Saturday. And I think we ought to thank him for the work he's done for us, which he's done for a long time. And I think it was important that he did the kind of work he did so we can be moving along. Because of that, at the end of this meeting, we will try and reorganize the group and discuss it and vote on it to see who's going to do what. Before that, we really need to have a discussion about what we saw at the Saturday meeting, where we stand on some of the issues. Because on Monday night, when we go see the selectmen here, Monday night when they're going to vote on it, if we have comments, it would be much better that we knew our comments worked together, if you will. Then the next issue we have to deal with is the articles that go in the warrant. There's some 55 of them in there. We haven't really examined any of them, and we have to vote on all of them. So I have some suggestions on how maybe we can start that even this evening doing something. All right, so that's where I think we are tonight. Just as we talk about the Saturday meeting, just starting that. Before we do that, I think it might be helpful, since we have some new members here also, to just start at that end and go around the table and just say our name so that everybody knows who's here, including the people at home. Want to start, Dana?
Sure. Dana DaCosta, last Friday was appointed to the Finance Committee to begin my 18th year on the Finance Committee after 10 months off. So I've been around here a long time. And
Still the new guy.
So I'm still the new guy. I understand that and appreciate that. And I was a selectman for 6 years before that and on other various committees. So hopefully just bring some experience to the board.
I'm Brian Weiner, and I was appointed a week ago today, so I'm the new guy, the real new guy, and I'm happy to be serving.
John Chori, I've served one 3-year term on the Finance Committee. This is my second 3-year term on the Finance Committee, and look forward to this year's budget cycle and the forthcoming budget cycles.
I'm Angelo Lamantia. This is my second or third 3-year term on this committee, and I've been on the Selectmen's Committee for 9 years, and I'm now off with that.
Dale Kennedy, I was appointed about 2 months ago. Until then, until Brian was appointed, I was the new guy. So I'm just starting my first 3-year session.
Tom Sherry, been involved in local politics for a long time. This is I'm about 2 years into my first 3-year term on the committee, and hopefully keep on going.
Jeffrey Hadley, I've been appointed as recording secretary for the Finance Committee. I've been in this position about 3 months.
Okay, let's now shift to Saturday's meeting. One of the whole areas that came up were changes to the budget, and relatively small changes for relatively small committees. And the decision, I think, at the end of the meeting was to add back what had been taken out of those budgets. The budgets included things like Council on Aging, the library, the health department, and there are probably 4 or 5 more. Are we in agreement that that was the appropriate thing to do?
All those outward-facing groups, I'm totally in agreement on. Council on Aging, all of the outward-facing groups for certain.
Dana?
I just know that on Monday night, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen identified five different areas. I think it was about $33,025, something like that, around the $33,000 range. I know I would support, some of them I did support actually at the Saturday meeting, but I would support most of those going back in. I know that part of what we're doing Monday is hearing from the schools and some sort of turn back from their side, and certainly we have to discuss the school budget, but I think if somebody's looking for money, that's where it would come from. I also have prepared a list of additional cuts that I would make if we can't get it from there, different areas where we could shift. Certainly, we don't want to make the number go a lot higher, but there's certain areas we could shift to make it so that it doesn't go higher if that becomes the burden to do. I think there's some areas of the budget that we would prioritize different than either Carol or the town administrator, just because we would.
You know, simple things, like 800 and change for like the Council on Aging, that just would make the difference to them. It's like, if we can't come up with $800 for the Council on Aging, then we're not doing our job. So we need to find cuts that need to be taken from places that can be cut legitimately, instead of making people who are trying to keep their budgets down to a minimum. And, you know, $800, come on. I'm over 60, we're all over 60, most of us. It's us. We need to take care of the aged people, sorry, the elderly in town, and just help them, you know, for these things, the amenities that we can give them for $800, and we're gonna begrudge them that, that's really biting into me.
I think that one was actually youth services, right? $825.
You said it was, but it was a very low number.
15,000 for
Council on Aging.
Council on Aging, 7,000.
7,000 is what they
Maybe I
wanted
haven't flipped.
restored.
Okay.
5,600 for some other group and 5,200 for another. I mean, it's
But it was
smaller
just ridiculously
amounts.
small numbers.
Small
that-
numbers.
Yes.
That why couldn't we just come up with small numbers and, you know, because people who are way over budget, and these people are trying to cut under budget.
Yeah.
That they're trying to meet, what the board told them to meet is to come under, and they're trying to meet that, but they're really hurting to do that.
So I
Some
could-
of them operate
These
on a
are-
shoestring budget.
My feeling is these are lifeblood areas of our budget. The library, cutting the library by $14,000 doesn't make sense to me, because that is, first of all, to tourists and to our year-round residents, that's a lifeblood resource that people
Exactly.
rely upon. Similarly, you know, cutting $600 out of the cemetery budget to keep the lady from getting reimbursed for the miles that she drives in her car in the course of a year, that just doesn't make any sense to me. The conservation, we clearly need to fund the shorebird monitoring as well as some of the other programs that go on. So really, the cuts they were being made being asked to make made no sense to me. Council on Aging, again, similarly, $1,000, $825 for the youth services. Those, I think all of those programs should be properly funded. Those people are already running on the skinny.
My feeling is that this entire group feels the same way. Is that correct?
Yeah,
All right,
I think
so-
you can gather that anyway.
Okay, yes.
Just want to add a couple, yeah, I agree, and, but let's not lose sight, too, that Joe Powers, the town administrator, was asked by the selectmen to produce a budget under the 2.5 proposition, and that's what he did. He went through all the
I understand
departments and just took a little bit from each department, and that's the job of the selectmen now and ours, to look at these and make a rational decision on the reinstatement or agree with them. And we have to keep in mind also, too, that the majority of these budgets, and Carol, what would you say the salary line item of the budget sits in? 80, 85%, would you think, is a percentage of a budget?
I think they're 77%.
77% of the budget is salaries, which is contractually obligated by the town to pay. So that means there's 23% left in a budget there's lighting, there's gas, there's heating, there's air conditioning that has to be paid for. So when you deduct those expenses, the number to cut, if you want to call it cut, is very small.
Sure.
So it is very challenging task to where to get these numbers if we want to stay within the 2.5.
Well, I think the next part of this is, all right, we want to keep the numbers
Right.
there. How do we do it? And I think
Exactly.
Dana has probably 4 things that he could say about that at this point.
Well, just on the 77%, just remember that that's not all contractually obligated. There's overtime in there, there's other things in there that aren't under the contract. The contract this year is 2%, is that? For an increase for salary people. And then you've got people that are new that are moving up in steps as well, so that adds to the number. When we talk about the school budget, there's a lot going on there. I think what's going to be offered by the schools Monday night will cover all the things that we're doing. On one of the handouts that I gave you is the exact same thing as the budget. The numbers line up exactly. It's the one that has just a couple of columns and it has the green in the middle. If you look off to the right, you'll see a red numbers there. If I had to cut further and someone said you need another $200,000, that's probably where I would come up with it, 225,000. Just saying that it's possible to do some more. If we had to fund these a different way, we could. Doesn't mean that you would all agree with that, doesn't mean that I would even all agree with that, but it just shows some areas where, I mean, you look at our reserve fund. If I had to, I think that some of these programs that we've talked about are more important than us keeping an extra 25,000 there, as an example. So, I just offer some stuff out there that I think would have a lower priority out of a $70 million budget than these items here that were identified Saturday. So that's just the way I would go about it. Either find it through what we're getting, do more with that, because that's going to be about 67.5 or something like that, the 74, 73% of whatever the schools are talking about, we're going to get over $60,000, and we need 35 or maybe even 40 to cover all these other things. So it means you're even going to have some additional to work with for another department if you need it.
Well, the other area that you now move into is what went on with the DPW.
I can't talk about that.
Well, you can't talk about it, but what went on Saturday with the DPW is that they were asked to not do the commercial part of the business. And they made an argument that they should do it. And I think probably, I don't know for sure, will that come up on Monday also?
I'm sorry,
Will
was
that come up on Monday, the discussion, that
Yes.
discussion?
Yes.
My feeling would be that the selectmen would probably go back to doing it, but do you know?
I do not know.
Okay. I mean, I support doing it, and I think it's a good idea until it runs out of existence. And there's also another issue in that during the summer, when you bring your trash and stuff up to the trash area, it is very, very crowded. If we eliminate a couple more days, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of the residents just to get rid of their trash. So I think it's a benefit. How does the group feel about that project?
Yeah. Can I just, when we start talking about DPW, how should we handle Dana? Should he leave?
Dana's recused. He's out.
Okay. I just wanted this for, it's going forward. From,
Yeah.
I understood. Good.
He recused himself.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts?
You want to go first?
Go ahead, Norm.
I think that Link should stick with taking on the MSW, the commercial MSW. We've got a 3-year contract now in place to take, I believe, close to 10,000 tons of garbage, and maybe off on that.
Nope.
And half of that is usually residential and half is commercial. From what I've talked with Link and seen his numbers, it more than pays for itself, at least on the surface of costs. Now, there are other costs associated with that, with personnel, with health benefits and retirement benefits. But I think that covers those costs, and I think we need to dig into those more. But I'm in favor of restoring the MSW commercial side to the budget and not entertaining shutting the transfer station down to 5 days a week, as has been talked about.
Well, I think if we do restore the commercial part of it, Link made a good case that it doesn't make financial sense to close down for a couple days, because then he would lose business to other places.
Agreed. You know, if we get commercial dumping and we get the fees for it, that's money in our pockets. We're still paying for what we haul out of here. We're paying for the load we bring out. So whether we bring the load out when they load up on 5 days or they load up on 7 days, they're still gonna bring the same stuff. If I can't bring it there on Tuesday morning, I'm gonna bring it there on Saturday morning. So I'm still bringing you my stuff, and you still have to get rid of it. So the cost is gonna be the same to get rid of it. So in that case, it doesn't make a real difference. And, you know, to shut down for a couple of days where, you know, ABC Landscaping can't get rid of their branches, they're gonna go over to Yarmouth or someplace, then we're losing out on their money. So I don't think it makes sense to shut down at all.
Okay. Carol, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
So the proposed budget does not include shutting down the
Okay.
transfer station 2 days.
It was mentioned, though. Link
was
did mention
It's in the
it.
narrative.
It was the interim town administrator's initial proposal.
Right.
And then the DPW director came to a meeting, and they had a discussion and a resolution. Say it that way. So, you know, I don't know what the board's going to do. I know that there were, you know, some emails and questions that they were posing to me, and, you know, which I answered. So I have no idea, honestly. I think that they're probably going to reinstate it, but I don't know.
And Carol, when you say reinstate, to what level? Link was initially cut something 832,000 roughly. They're going to reinstate 500,000 or the total 8,000?
So I think they were thinking about the 500,000 that he came to the table with.
Right.
With the revenues from the MSW covering.
With $500,000 with
Okay.
revenue, right.
So Link would still be cut roughly 300,000 or so.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first thing I spoke about on Saturday's meeting, because it was the one thing, when I went through this as an absolute neophyte, that struck me was this clearly was something that was cash flow positive, and it didn't make any sense to me to just end it. I couldn't figure out why we wouldn't continue to do it if it was self-supporting.
Okay.
So I'm in complete agreement with everybody else.
So at least we know where we are when and if the selectmen bring that up. Any other comments you don't want to make, Carol? The other thought is, the other thing that came up in terms of money is, that I brought up actually, was revenue coming in and looking at the costs that we charge people to do various things. Do we request that the selectmen take a look at that? Do we just leave it alone? Do we wait till next year, or do we ask that they begin something this year? We have, and that what brings the availability of funds to mind is what the department that handles handing out the papers needed to build buildings and whatnot, building department. They came in and tried to raise their rates significantly, and were told, no, don't do that, for whatever reason, I don't know. If they thought they could raise it and it wasn't a problem, why not do it and have their costs covered? So I don't know what we should do with that, and I think, Dana, you could come join the group at this point, because this is just it's not a DPW thing.
So similar to your feelings, and John brought some up on Saturday's meeting relative to golf, one area that to me seems like an opportunity point for the community is some of the fees that are charged by the harbor master for moorings, for dockage, for the waiting list, for the use of winter space, for storage, quite a number of areas that I think would derive additional revenue, and it would be painless to the people who are already investing in those spaces. So to me, that seems like an opportunity point. And if we need some give, that would be a place to get give.
Just everybody remember, the revenue you collect must be spent on the thing you collected it for. So we can't
It's
go,
not for profit.
we can't.
No, I know, but we moved things out of the items were moved out of the harbor master's budget, for example, and put in conservation, made it more difficult for the girl in conservation to make it work for her, and so she got cut. So my feeling is if that was back in the harbor master's budget and there was more revenue derived as a result, that would then be offset by that revenue. So that seemed like a logical repositioning of that expense item.
I think you're right. If there's room to raise that rate, you raise that rate. But I think we have to look at all of the rates.
Right.
Whether it's the rental costs for cultural center or community center, whatever. You don't want to drive things to a disaster, but just to see where they should be.
Could I add on to that?
Sure.
I know it's obvious, a topic, Angela, you brought up a number of times. It's not only the rates they charge, but the true cost of running a program. You know, when it was pointed out in Saturday's meeting that the DPW was used quite a bit down at the harbors to finish off certain projects down there. That the harbor, that the rebuilding of the harbor, landside, waterside didn't come out of that budget. It came out of Link's budget to put up the fence, do the grass, and a few other things. When Link probably touches the majority of these departments with services in kind that come out of his budget for all these various departments around town using his services. And I think that's what we need to, if we can, look at that also, that the true cost of running a department. I mean, the book here has done a great I think, an attempt at trying to find true cost of a department when you start listing not only the expenses, but the funding sources, but also below the bottom lines are the employee benefit allocations. You know, the life insurance, the Medicare, the health insurance, the county retirement, and the most important of all these is debt service, you know, of what it costs for that department to retire the debt that's incurred by that department. And that gives one of the true representations of what it fully costs and to run that department. So I'm all in favor of re-examining these revenues for various departments and fees that are charged, or if we, I don't know if we can charge them in kind, but similar to what an enterprise fund has done. I mean, the water service department is charged $72,000, Carol, for services that they get from the town hall here as part of payroll and things like that.
Let me look that up for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's close to that. But anyway, that's what I like. The true cost of running that department.
I think it's interesting you brought up the water department. What I have in my hand is the document that
Well, we'll say it in there.
that the manager handed us all, and it starts with how much money they collect, where they spend it, and it ends up with the reserve fund contribution. And I think that'd be handy for all the departments to have a document similar to this. This is very complicated. It could be made much simpler, but I think maybe like that. And it'd be helpful.
If I may, you know, tagging back between you and John, you know, we need a scope of work for each department, because a lot of these departments overlap different jobs. And so who's actually responsible for which job? I mean, just the White House lighting alone has been bouncing back and forth between the parks and Link. Now it's back in Link's lap. So if there's an expense that needs to be had in town, which department's responsible for that? And then we could attribute that, and then so what does it cost to operate that department? So we need to know what the actual operating expense of each department is, where their lines are, because everything is just kind of mishmashed in between. Well, I'm going to do that. Well, no, I'm going to go down and clean the beaches, but that's DPW and not the beaches. And who's responsible for what?
Okay.
Carol, what is OFUS?
Other funding uses and sources.
Is that's the charge that the town, that the town charges the water department?
Well, that's the account that so it's a transfer out
Yeah.
on page 47. It's $730,290. That includes all their health insurance, their property liability insurance, their workers' comp, and all the support that administration, treasurer, collectors, accounting office provides.
Okay.
Dana, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I don't know where you really want to go with talking to the selectmen about fees. I mean, that's their responsibility and so forth. And it used to be that all these fees were in the town bylaws, and then it was taken out and given to the responsibility to actually set the fees, for most of them, with the Board of Selectmen.
I'm not sure.
And there's two portions, as Carol will tell you, that you have to declare the fee, and then you have to state the revenue, that if you're gonna use that revenue for this year. Otherwise, you're raising fees and creating free cash for a future year. You're not raising fees to be able to use it. So that's one of the biggest problems with just talking about fees, is exactly how much money you're gonna raise and how you're gonna use it.
I just wanted to bring that up tonight, so that if it comes up on Monday night, we all know where we stand on it. I don't think bringing it up, us bringing it up on Monday night is a sound thing.
One other comment on the budget in terms of, just especially for the new people, what the process actually is that the Finance Committee is gonna give the motion at town meeting. So if we happen to have a disagreement with the Board of Selectmen, there will be opportunities between now and town meeting to get those agreements ironed out. But if it doesn't happen, if there's a disagreement on a particular budget, the Finance Committee is gonna say what we want in terms of a motion, and then it will be up to the Board of Selectmen to try and amend that, to change that. So we get the first bite of the apple, so forth, and they would have to change it. So you keep that in mind too, in terms of, do we switch to agree with them, or do they switch to agree with us? It's just part of the discussion.
Or we agreed to disagree.
Or we agreed to disagree.
Does anyone else have anything you want to discuss about the Saturday meeting, or should we move on? Move on, this is what I'm hearing, or not hearing, so we'll move on. And I think that our timing is right. Let me see where I put the thing. This is a lovely document. This is the annual town meeting warrant. And as far as I know, there are like 55 approximately, because the number changes, of articles. And Dana was absolutely right. This FinCon will present the motion for the town. And of course, the people who do it are us. So if you don't want to be standing up for an article, it's very difficult to stand up in front of the town. It's better for us to look at it, decide what we want to do with it, and try and get the selectmen to either change it or not, or to change our thoughts because we were wrong somewhere. So my suggestion is that we start formally at every meeting going over a number of the articles. I went through and I figured out that I think that the first 16 articles is really tied to the budget very tightly and a lot of the selectmen's activities. So I thought maybe we could start with like number 17 for next week and work up through maybe 10 or 15 articles. And what we need to do is, if the articles have financial numbers in it, it's very hard to do unless the numbers are available to us. But if there's other kinds of activities, we should be able to start getting our position done on it. Any comments on the articles?
The only comment is, I believe these articles have to be at least maybe majority voted on, because it has to go to the printer. There's a deadline on the printer to March 29th, I think. So that isn't a heck of a lot of time.
Well, I think we have three shots at it.
Yeah. Now, we can always put in a like we've done in the past, a sheet that we put in the town meeting to try to, because things will change too between the printer and town meeting, but just to keep that, is that a hard date? That's a hard date, right,
Yes.
Carol?
Yes, it's Monday, March 30th, for publication April 16th.
Okay, so that's just FYI.
Yeah, we have to do that, though, I think. And I think maybe we can do a lot more at a time.
I'm going to be out of town for 10 days, though, unfortunately. I mean,
If they let you
You're very lucky.
well, this whole process shifted a month, for one thing. You know, we were a month delayed with meeting with the selectmen for various reasons, and as it was pointed out on Monday night, there's only 55 days or so left between now and town meeting, so.
Anybody, Dana?
One of my handouts, and again, for the new people, I do this for my own benefit, and I don't mind sharing it. This is the one with the green stripes there. It's basically the one-liners of the warrant. So it tells you in one sentence what's going on in that warrant. If it's an NC, it's a no-charge article. If there's a 0 there, it means that there's a price, but we don't have the price yet. And over on the right-hand column, I tried to identify some of the funding sources that I think will be there, but it's not carved in stone at all. If you see on the first column, the numbers, in the warrant, there's a lot of double X's in there, and I just numbered them all. The red numbers in there are my numbers. So if you look at those and you want, there's 59 articles, a total of $78,663,989. And I don't have the free cash number yet to plug that in, but we start plugging in free cash, and we start plugging in taxes, and we start plugging in other sources of revenue, and come up with a way to fund these or not. But it's just a way that I use to help track the numbers and to help track how we vote on them, because we not only have to vote on all of these articles, we have to have a written reason as to what our position is. We have to explain to town meeting what our position is. And we'll talk about 15 things, but there's only room to put a few of those things in each article. So that's part of the work that will have to be done. I know I've done it in the past, but we'll be teaching other people to do that along the way. But
Well, this document is wonderful when you're reading the articles, because it may change a little bit here and there, but at least it gives you some level until we get the real dollars. So I would suggest.
just a tool that you
It's a
can
tool.
use to help keep track of things as we go.
Does anybody have any thoughts about particular articles that they've read or not read, or particular issues that might come up?
You mentioned, since you asked, Article 12, is that a new thing this year, the 3% for the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund? Carol, do you know?
That's new.
It's brand new.
Yes.
That's a 3% surcharge on property tax.
I think it's up to 3.
Up to, okay, you're right, up to 3%. So at town meeting, we'll actually stick a percentage in there, is that what we're?
If the board, I guess, chooses to move forward with this.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Dana?
We have it's the old land bank that evolved into the CPC fund. That's a 3% surtax on all of our taxes. In other words, once you figure out exactly what our tax is going to be, then at the end of that, you add 3% to it, and that becomes a CPC fund. This would create a second one of those.
Another 3%.
So it would be another 3%, and I don't know if there was a discussion or not, or will be a discussion about whether we cut the other one down,
Yeah.
because that CPC land bank money is dropping off significantly in 2024. It's done completely as far as paying the land bank back. They're running out of uses for, that fund is building. It's got over $2 million in it now, and you know, they need places to spend that money. It almost becomes, why are we building up that fund and gonna start a new tax rather than maybe look at turning that one down some and starting the other tax or something, or swapping out So you're still only taxing people on a 3% total, but now it's split up between land bank and sewers.
You sure it's 24 that it goes to?
Yes,
24?
absolutely.
Okay. I thought it was a little sooner, but
Yeah, I thought it was sooner too. but-
Well, I don't know if there's any penalty for us paying it earlier. Do you happen to know? Or-
I don't have
It's getting down low enough so that some sort of, you could almost get to the point where you pay it earlier. But if we just let it run its natural course, 2024 is, but this year it's 341,000 in terms of how much money is needed in this budget to pay the amount. So the amount that has to be paid each year is getting lower and will get lower right up to the end. So it's almost to the point where you just say, well, let's just put it all out there.
I think the residents would be positive in being able just to transfer that from the land purchases to paying for wastewater. But for that to happen, the first piece has to be changed or examined somehow.
Yeah.
Either change the timing or change it. Okay,
Be an interesting discussion.
okay. Any other articles?
Just remind the Finance Committee that, you know, we deal with the dollars and cents, but here in Harwich, we're kind of unique in that the Finance Committee takes a position on every article. The no-charge articles tend to be the most emotional, usually, and cause the most debate in many cases, even though we're not talking about money. Last year, we had a very long discussion on the budget, but in other years, we've had the budget go right through without any discussion and just get voted. But I've had 2-hour discussions on dogs on the beaches or other things that have to do with no charge articles. And we have to have a position and a reason for each one of those, and sometimes that's harder than doing some of the financial stuff. But we have to, they figure we're a 9-person body that has a good pulse on the community. Town meeting wants our input on these no-charge articles as well, so we need to keep our thoughts on that as well. There's one in here that was here last year, and that is changing the Board of Selectmen from Selectmen to Select Board. It's worded the exact same way it was last year. We, as a committee, rejected it last year, and town meeting rejected it last year, and it's here again this year. I would think, I'm gonna at least ask if the selectmen are interested in just taking that one right out until, they don't have a committee this year, a bylaw review committee, to do it right and to fix it as we said it should be done for this year, and they haven't done that yet. So why is it in the warrant? So there are articles we should talk about with them as we go through the process, but again, we're short on time and it's gonna be a quick process.
So-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We've-
I'm done.
I had another
Oh.
article that I was curious about.
Sure.
There's an article in here about the Conservation Commission wanting to change the language of their bylaws.
What number is it?
At the end.
I think it's more restrictive on things, Dale, is what it is. I don't think there's any money attached to it, but I think it's,
Number 60?
That far up?
Yeah, it was way in the back. Yeah, new climate policy bylaw.
that's the last one.
Reading
You
through
get to
it
the
last
herring
night.
stuff.
Yeah, I found it. It's,
Language related to the,
there's no page numbers, but,
Oh, the new climate policy bylaw, is that the one you're talking about?
Is that one by petition?
Yes.
it's,
it was,
there's no page number, but
Yeah,
it's article,
struggling with the pages here.
XX.
It goes on and on.
Article X,
On my sheet, it's number 59, the last one.
does it say new climate policy law? Is that-
Conservation
yeah.
Commission?
Conservation Commission amend the general bylaw,
Right.
chapter 310, wetlands protection.
Yeah, there's like 10 pages
Yeah,
associated
it just
with
goes
it.
on and on with some bolding and some striking out. And it's a lot to digest, and I'm not sure that I really grasp the impact of some of these changes without some representation by
But I think
conservation.
you're absolutely right. If that's an issue, when it gets on our schedule, we should ask somebody from conservation to come along.
And ask the petitioners to come
Yep.
forward and talk about what they intend. One thing to keep in mind on petition articles is there's no way to change or amend the wording that's in there. It has to go as printed. That's one of the problems when submitting an article by petition. You have to have it correct. The only changes can be agreed to by the 10 signatures that put it in. They would all have to agree. So it makes it very difficult. If they're not worded correctly, a lot of times a petition article won't survive because of some wording areas. These all get reviewed by town council. So the language would have to be correct and so forth. But we won't be able to offer an amendment that might fix something that we think should be there or that takes away revenue or cost or whatever. You can see there's a $0 amount on this one. That means it could have a potential cost. We have to figure that out.
Any other?
Just one, I think on Dale's thing, the last paragraph, Dale, in that whole 10 pages, kind of boils it down as to what it is. It's what they call explanation, and it's...
Yeah, that's, actually, that explanation's been very helpful
So that kind of
across the board for all of
boils that
these.
10 pages down to the paragraph.
Right. But again, it's, you know, with some word being added here and there and struck out here and there, it's hard to know what the realistic impact of some of these changes is going to be. They're asking about extension of borders from 100 feet to 200 feet. And I don't know if that would be painful to somebody or good for the typing cloakers or what.
Will?
Yes.
Article 5, the Monomoy Regional School District budget. I would love to sit down with them and actually get some real numbers from them. And, what the stuff we've been given to is okay to read through, but are these his hard numbers? Can he reduce anything? I would like to have them come, maybe have a meeting with us, if that's
Yeah,
possible.
Monday.
That's going to happen on Monday.
Monday.
Will it, for sure? Okay.
Their budget's being voted on tonight, the school committee.
Okay, because I was hoping to see him here Saturday, but, the school was here Saturday. Okay,
Tomorrow night, we'll be there.
Monday.
Monday.
Sorry.
Don't rush it.
I'm a few days off. Carol, do you have anything that you think we should be covering or
Well,
examining?
the only thing that I have is some information that I had put together that Mr. Trory had asked for Saturday, and it just, the topic didn't come up, so I just kept it to myself, but I'm happy to share. One of the items is kind of the financial picture of the cultural center to date. So I have that here. I'm happy to just pass out, if that's okay.
Thank you.
I was also asked for warrant article balances, current warrant article balances for everything that has
Give
been
one for
voted
Jeff.
prior.
One more?
I'm sorry, Carol. We're making noise with the paper. There you go.
And then the last item that I made some assumptions of how I was going to put this information together was on collective bargaining units. There's 8 collective bargaining units in the town, and I provided information on when they expire, how many steps they have in them, what's the COLA that was, or a cost of living increase that was been negotiated, and any other increases that were also negotiated in those agreements. We have 2 that are expiring on June 30th, and one of which I know is underway for negotiations currently.
I will say, as a part-time employee, for the record, I'm not a member of any bargaining association. I don't get any benefits or any of those things.
Thank you, these are all very helpful.
Yeah,
Oh,
If I could
good.
just add on to Carol's, it's just something I asked Carol for, and she did very
There you go.
very nicely, and, because I was concerned that on the unspent warrant articles, that some departments keep asking for more, and they don't spend what they had, what were authorized to spend the previous year. And I'd just like to see a closure or a time frame on some of these things. I know if they don't spend it, it turns back, but you can see some of these annual town meetings when it was approved, and it still hasn't been spent yet. And, because we all know what happens when things don't get spent in a timely manner, things cost more. The library was a good case in point on that. And I just don't like to come back and ask for more money for an article that probably should have been spent already. And in the cultural center, I know I think we're to year 3 of a 5-year use of the cultural center, and I'd like to see a plan going forward for the 5 years. And I'm working on that now with Carol's help and Caroline's help, and just so that when we're asked to subsidize the cultural center, we have a good idea of what revenues have come in and what expenses are.
So for all of these unspent article available budget items, is the money encumbered somewhere? Is it sitting somewhere waiting to be?
Yeah, so just to, that document that's article balances as of February 29th, the second column is kind of a really interesting column, because the second and third digit on that second column tells you what year, so what town meeting it went to. So if it's a 619048, it means it went to town meeting of 19. If it's a 615016, it means it went to town meeting of 15. It's just a quick little
Yeah, that's
way for you to know
good information.
how long it's been there.
Dana, comment?
Carol, do we still have to go back to town meeting to take these back, or can that be done at the,
That can be done at any time. I actually, every year, I send out this list to all the department heads and say, release the funds, and they come back with, telling me which ones I can release.
That's probably something we could definitely address it with the Board of Selectmen, because some of these stuff just, have a dollar left over an article that needs to be collected. So just the amount of paper we're printing on some of these things. It also, from our point of view, can be used as a funding source for some article. If it's an article that's not being used, and we go to the department and say, well, what are you saving this for? And they have an article for another one, as John alluded to, we can say, well, we're using this as part of the funding for that.
Exactly.
You can't do that in every case, but in some cases you can.
And that, in my understanding, has to go to town meeting.
Yes, that would be a town meeting thing.
In the cultural center, this has all the costs that are spent, all expenses, even if it's not in their department. For example, Carol and Carrie spends 20% of her time there, or whatever.
So it only includes the positions that work at the cultural center, and then DPW's assistants at cultural center. Carol and Carrie's salary is not on that sheet that I gave you, nor are her benefits. The two people that are working there are part-time. They don't receive benefits, so we allocated benefits for the DPW personnel that provide maintenance work and to the building. The custodian that works there is part-time with no benefits.
Okay. And the other question is, I thought there was quite a few repair items that had to go forward in time.
In the capital plan,
Capital plan,
Capital
okay. Separate place, that's fine.
And that number is about $625,000 spread over 3 years, next 3 years. It's new boilers, new windows, and a generator.
Dana?
Just on the documents that I do, I'll start sending those out electronically, but you'll see 3 tabs. The middle one is the capital plan, and I haven't caught up to date on that one yet. I caught up to date on the other two.
We done with this for?
Yep.
and,
Thank you, Carol, for this. This is great.
Yeah, good
Thank you.
information.
So, if we're done with that, we move to the last thing we have to do this evening, and that's reorganize. I would like to take the opportunity to make a couple of suggestions, if you'll allow me. I think that Dana, because of his experience, would make an absolutely excellent chairperson. And what I would like to see is Dana take that position and hold it through next town meeting. And what I would like to have also happen is we've been trying, I know, to have younger people and people who've been in different, not around for 100 years, to get involved with running the committees. So I would suggest that John becomes the vice chairman, and also until after the town meeting. And I would like to be a clerk. I don't know what else, or some other name that you could give me. And my role would be a strange one, because anytime that DPW becomes an issue, I will step up and for Dana. That's because some people are concerned that Dana works part-time for them. I don't think that's a problem at all, so it's not difficult for me to get involved with that. And to also make sure, get involved with that, and also make sure that the town, the meetings that we're having cover all the businesses and whatnot, and that he's not going down a line towards one area. And that would go until the end of, to right after town meeting. And at that point, we would reorganize the group, and that would be a change with John being chair and Dana being vice chair. And if necessary, I'd continue to be the clerk. I know it's a strange way of doing things, but I think it covers a lot of the issues we have to deal with for short term. And it's only a few months, actually, to make sure that it works. And then we can change based on where everybody is at that time. That's a suggestion. That's all it is. That's all I can do.
So we'll take this in order one at a time. I would like to make a motion that we elect Dana as chairman of our committee.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion.
Go ahead, David.
Discussion?
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear that one of the neat things about the Finance Committee is that we all have our own vote, and even the new people, old people, and not by old I mean age, I mean old as in long time here, and it's really going to be up to every person to express their vote and not be afraid to talk about things. One of the things I just cannot do is just unnecessarily lead this committee to a place that you don't want to go. You're going to have to all chip in, and my time's going to be spent working with John to get him up to running meetings and for the next 60 days until we're through town meeting. I know that's why a lot of people were interested in getting me back. I'm glad to come back and do that, but it's with that in mind to get John up to speed to do that. And if you're comfortable with that and I'm comfortable with that, then we'll go forward. But you know, I do have a part-time job at the town, and that's my livelihood, and I cannot jeopardize that in any way. And I think we can go forward in that way if we do that. Angelo's stepping up and is really going to lead the charge on a lot of those things, and we'll get young John whipped into shape here, and see, I was chairman of this committee, I think, 5 different times now. I was chairman of the Board of Selectmen twice. Angelo's been a chairman. There is some nuances to it that you just have to learn, and hopefully that's what my role will be as a teacher for John. And but the rest of you really have to be able to step up and speak your minds. You've all been asking good questions and stuff. I know Tom's not afraid of speaking his mind. And just going forward with that in mind, that it's your committee. And I've always insisted that the chairman is just the guy that helps make the agenda. And we're going to be putting that pressure on John over the next 2 months so that he's coming up with what you need to discuss to get us to town meeting. With that in mind, I'm fine with it.
Any other comments from anybody? If not, we have a vote, please. All in favor? Opposed? Congratulations or condolences, whichever it may be.
Let's get the rest of the votes in.
I'd like to make a motion, John as the vice chair.
I second.
Any comments, conversation? No? We'll take a vote.
Al, John?
He's being very quiet. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Congratulations to you.
Make it a 3-time around. I'd like to nominate Angelo for our clerk.
Can't you think of another name? No, it's just
Sergeant at Arms.
Sergeant at Arms, would that be?
No, clerk's not.
I second that.
Any conversation on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, I think. At this point, I think we're basically,
I just got 2 little quick housekeeping things. I told Patty McCure, she's Joe admin or the selectman's admin? Patty?
I don't know what her title is.
oh, yeah.
Well, Patty McCure, who works in the front office down there, she probably represents both, but she was putting together a list of the finance committee members with their addresses and telephone numbers. I'll pass it down, just pass it around, and just verify what's on there. And if you have a couple email addresses or a couple phone numbers, your preferred one on that list, so that we can transfer it amongst us and they have a record in town hall. And then second, we need to approve the minutes. Angela. Okay, you're going to mention that? Okay. Thank you.
We have minutes for 3 meetings. A November 14th meeting, a December 19th, sorry, couldn't get it, and a January 6th. So obviously, you have to recuse yourself.
Right.
You, I believe, would have to recuse yourself for a couple of them. Does everyone else, you too? So for the 1, 2, 3, 4 of us who've been to these meetings, someone,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meetings of November 14th, January 6th, and December 19th.
is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Any conversation? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain, abstain.
That's the list of names.
Oh, I can keep it.
No. I mean, just verify that they're correct.
I'll do it in a second. If this is it, we're done for the evening.
We're gonna,
Make a motion?
no,
No.
before you do, we planning on meeting Monday with the Board of Selectmen? Are we meeting Thursday?
I think we need to, we meet Thursday, and as I said at the beginning of the meeting, a good portion of it has got to be the articles.
Right.
And obviously also what happened at the Monday's meeting. We probably have more information on some of the budget items. But I think it's going to be very important to move quickly forward on those things, particularly the articles, because we are in a box.
Yeah. I think on the articles, if you want to go through the whole warrant, kind of make notes as to what your questions are and so forth, and if we can answer them then, we can vote them. If we can't answer them then, we find out what resources we need to bring in to answer them, whether it's through Carol or whether the people who are asking for this come forward or whatever, whether we need to see golf or whether we need to see whoever, we can bring them in and get some votes taken, but we gotta start putting together votes and reasons for those votes. And if you can get a copy of last year's warrant, you can see a lot of the articles are the same. A lot of the articles will have the reason, customary articles, for example, the herring fishery is a customary article. There'll be a reason we support or oppose that. And just look at some of the reasons and how they're constructed and what we kind of say about them will give you an idea of what we do. And you'll also see in there some of the ones that we didn't have a reason for in time for print and what we say about those. Give you an idea of our other options. But by town meeting, we have to have a position on every one. And we try to have a position on as many as possible between now and when it goes to print, because that's giving the public as much information as possible as to where we are is helpful.
I think that our meetings have been ending relatively shortly over the last several months. I am thinking they're probably going to go 9:30 at all. It's the only way to make it work.
Yeah.
I tried to figure out how to do this and do some articles, but it would have been impossible because everybody would have to read the article and then, so unfortunately we couldn't use tonight. But we're done.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the Finance Committee meeting for tonight.
I'll second that.
Done. Thank you.